How big is your God? Is your God big enough to tell you what to wear? Does God determine your clothes? The Bible's pretty clear on this one. 1 Timothy chapter 2. Women should adorn themselves in modest apparel. Be dressed modestly. Women, when you get dressed, you ought to say, Lord, I'd like to please you. Please show me if this is proper. My daddy always said, if you're not in business, don't advertise. Real simple. Is your clothing
And I guarantee that if you're constantly like dressing super immodestly and exposing everything, guys will give you like temporary attention for that, but those type of guys are not going to end up making great like long-term relationships. They're not going to respect you as a person, and so modesty is really important, but it's super important to me because I'm a Christian and there are certain Bible verses specifically targeted to women about dressing modestly. 1 Timothy 2, 9 through 10, likewise also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control. 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20, do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you are bought at a price. Therefore honor God with your body. 1 Corinthians 10:31, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. And so as a Christian, every single part of your life should be glorifying God. So regarding lust, Matthew 5:28 says, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And so by looking at you and thinking those sexual thoughts, that guy is sinning. And so by choosing an immodest outfit because you want to look hot or you want to gain attention, knowing that that is causing a guy to sin because you're wearing an outfit like that, that's just being really, really selfish because you're placing your own confidence in like wearing the latest trend ahead of this guy who's sinning. Another verse is Matthew 18, 6 through 7. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world for temptations to sin. For it is necessary that temptation come, but woe to the one by whom the temptation comes. So Jesus is not cool when you cause someone else to sin. And the way you dress can cause a guy to sin. As Christians, we're outsiders to this world. Heaven is our real home, and so it shouldn't matter what other people are wearing. That shouldn't affect how you are dressing. You shouldn't be like, oh, everyone is dressing that way, I have to dress like them. No, you're a Christian. You don't have to.
Now there's things that come better from a woman than from a man, and I happen to know one who has something to say, so.
What did you just say? Well, since I spend most of my time in ministry with women, I've noticed clothing. I'm a woman myself, so I just want to borrow your time a little bit this morning because in the past decade I've seen things change. You know, fashion industry says that every 30 years styles repeat itself. In the 70s, bright, bold patterns, and I saw them coming in the last decade, and I said, been there, done that, don't want to do that again. The boldness, though, that I see is what Gary has already referred to as sensuality, and I had to change the leadership covenant that we have established for women's ministries so my leaders understood. We present a picture of God in the way we present ourselves. So I added this statement: I will model a humble and teachable spirit and dress with modesty. Now, I had lots of questions. What in the world does that mean? Now, I'm going to ask your both permission and forgiveness at this point, because I used something very quickly so that they would get the point. I don't want to see your boobs. If I'm sitting across the table from you, standing up buying a ticket to somewhere, I don't want to have to look away because I can't look. And I'm a woman. I don't want to do that. Second thing is I don't want to see your skin. So you're worshiping God and all I can see is your midriff. Get rid of it. Well, there's another point to that, too. Anyway, cover it up. And the third thing is, I don't want to see your upper legs. So that's kind of the crass way of saying this is what we don't want to see. This is what modesty is. But let me go ahead and give you two good reasons that we ought to pay attention to what Gary's just read in 1 Timothy 2, that Paul writes under the leadership of the Spirit, and he calls respectable apparel. It's modest, and it has self-control. And he explains that, and actually he gives us an option. The preferred option is to be dressed in good works. But let me read to you what Nancy Lee DeMoss, who is the head of something called Revive Our Hearts, here's how she suggests 2 simple and helpful criteria for modesty in dress. Modesty means avoiding exposing intimate parts of the body and avoiding emphasizing private or alluring parts of the body in your dress. They're yours. Keep them to yourself. Now that's what she would say. So what we can say then, modesty means self-control in my dress so that the secret parts of my body that were meant to be kept secret are kept secret and sacred. And they need to be covered. The interesting thing is, I don't believe for a minute the opposite is frumpiness. I believe God values color and loveliness and femininity. We're going to have to be very discerning. And I'm speaking particularly to the ladies, and I hope the men are listening too. Now, so the first thing is that God, how you dress really matters to God. Second is, it matters to the Christian community. And Gary has just mentioned that briefly, particularly to those of you who are our brothers. So as we recognize this, I have the right to say this. One of the men I work with on this campus, now if you want to know who it is, come and ask me later, has asked me repeatedly, could you please urge the ladies in this church to cover up? I have a problem. I've had a problem with pornography. I'm not in bondage to it anymore, but when I sit behind them and all I can see is skin, that's a problem for me. Let me give you a quote that I love. This has changed my whole understanding and appreciation of modesty from C.J. Mahaney from a little book he's just written called Worldliness. This is what he says. Ladies, your wardrobe is a public statement of your personal and private motivation. Hemlines are a heart issue. Modesty means propriety and decency. It means avoiding clothes and adornment that are extravagant or costly or sexually enticing. Modesty is humility. I love this. Modesty is humility expressed in dress. It's a desire to serve others, particularly men, not promoting or provoking sensuality. And modesty is a choice you make. Immodesty is more than wearing a short skirt or a low-cut top. It's the act of drawing undue attention to yourself. It's pride on display by what you wear. Self-control is, in a word, restraint. Restraint for the purpose of purity, for the purpose of exalting God and not ourselves, and that's the hallmark of a godly woman's dress. Now that's compelling. So let me close with encouraging this. You really never realize how important your clothing is until you realize how important you are to God as a woman. So I'm going to invite you as sisters this morning not to let the immodest styles squeeze you into their mold. And if you're a parent, that's going to be very important as you take your daughters shopping. So let me suggest this. Cover up. Keep those intimate parts of your body a secret for the glory of God. And if you're married, for the good of your husband. If you're single, stand tall before the Lord as a woman of beauty. Be content in the charm of God's image on your life. And all women, I don't know who you are in this room, but you need to repent of your sin if you're using your dress to be admired or to seduce the men in this room away from sexual purity or away from their wives. And instead, let's rejoice in being women. Let's feel free to be modestly feminine, clothed in garments that are chosen with discernment. You'll need to pray before you go shopping. Shaped by self-control, modeled in good works and pleasing first to God. For the spiritual health of this local church, whose relationships you have power to control or destroy.
But now he goes to 9, he says, likewise, I want women to adorn themselves with proper clothing, modestly and discreetly, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly garments. Whoa. Well, hold on there. And this is something I'm going to be very honest with you, that my wife and I we've really been struggling with this. Not that we don't want to obey it, we want to make sure we know what it means. Because what does it mean? Because we've been given some terms here, and I mean, they're not, we almost look at this and say, why didn't you give us more? I mean, give us a rule. Give us, something that we can just follow. But I want you to look at some things. I want you to see, first of all, likewise, I want women to adorn themselves. Now, He wants women to adorn themselves. Okay? So adornment's not bad. But that adornment, we're going to see, is in verse 11. In verse 10, it's good works, godliness, a quiet and submissive spirit. Now, but let's go on. He says, I want women to adorn themselves with proper clothing. That tells me that there is clothing that's improper for a Christian woman. All right? I mean, that's just logic. There is clothing that is improper for a Christian woman. Now, he says, the clothing must be modest. Modest. This is very important. It's literally proper clothing with modesty is the way it goes in the original text. So, with modesty. My wife has a really good thing that she says, and she goes, if your clothing is a frame for your face from which the glory of God is to shine, it's proper. If it draws attention to your face. If your clothing draws attention to your body, to outline it, to make it noticed, then it's sensual. It's sensual. What you're doing is wrong. Now, I want to step off for just a second. Women, you need to understand something. Men are not as dumb as you think they are. My wife and I have a friend in Illinois, and she's a very pretty lady. Very pretty. And if she walked in that door right now, every man in this room, if he turned and saw her, this is what they would say. Well, that's a very pretty lady. That's a very elegant lady. That's a beautiful lady. And that's what they would think. But, ladies, there are also women that aren't half as attractive as that lady I just described to you, either in their face or in their body, and they could walk in that door, and the moment every man heard the door open and he looked over there, if he was a godly man, he would have to go like this. Because it's not beauty. It's sensuality. And even though you can't exactly write down the rules and put it all on paper, when you see it, you know it. There is a difference between beauty and sensuality. And God is not against beauty. He is against sensuality.